the lie that ignited the fire. The courtroom was silent, but not the kind of quiet that comforts. It was a tense, suffocating silence that presses down on your chest like a physical weight. Marissa Taylor sat in the back row, hands folded tightly in her lap, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might betray her. She wore her usual sharp blazer, hair pulled back neatly, glasses perched on the edge of her nose. But today, she wasn't here as herself. She was undercover, an inspector for the state, investigating misconduct in the local police department. No one knew, not even the judge, not even the officers involved. Across the room, Officer Daniel Brooks, a man with a reputation that made his colleagues either admire him or fear him, rose to testify. He cleared his throat, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, and pointed to a screen displaying grainy CCTV footage. This woman, he said, voice firm and unyielding, was involved in the theft at the Midtown jewelry store on March 14th. She approached the counter suspiciously, lingered around the display, and left with intent to steal. Marissa's stomach dropped. She felt the blood drain from her face, not because she was guilty, she hadn't committed a crime, but because he was describing a completely fabricated story. And the worst part? His eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to challenge him. The prosecutor nodded, a predatory gleam in her eyes. "And you're certain it was her, Officer Brooks?" Brooks leaned forward, voice dripping with false certainty. "Absolutely. I remember her clearly. A black woman, mid-30s, wearing a navy jacket and glasses. It matches the suspect to A.T. Marissa felt a tightening in her chest. The description fit her down to the glasses, and she knew exactly why he chose her. She had reported police misconduct months ago, and he had a vendetta. She had no proof. Yet, and right now, her cover as an inspector made her invisible to him, but not powerless. She raised her hand slowly, letting her voice carry calmly across the courtroom. "Objection, Your Honor." The judge, a man with a stern face lined by years of dealing with legal theatrics, peered over his glasses. "On what grounds, Ms.?" "Taylor, Your Honor," she corrected. "Marissa Taylor." "Objection. The officer's testimony is inaccurate. I was not present at the location he described on March 14th. In fact, I have documentation proving I was elsewhere entirely." A ripple of surprise moved through the courtroom. Brooks' eyes narrowed, a spark of recognition flashing in them, though he didn't know why. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Ms. Taylor, do you have evidence to support this claim?" Marissa's hand didn't shake. She placed a thick file on the table in front of her. "Yes, Your Honor. Here are time-stamped records from the government audit I was conducting that day. They show I was inspecting the Department of Motor Vehicles downtown during the alleged theft. I was under official duty, and these logs verify it." The courtroom murmured. A few people whispered, exchanging glances. Brooks shifted uncomfortably, but his mouth tightened into a line. "You're accusing a police officer lying under oath?" The prosecutor asked sharply, voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and indignation. "This is a serious accusation, Ms. Taylor. Do you understand the implications?" Marissa met her gaze evenly. "I understand perfectly. But the truth is the truth, and if an officer believes they can manipulate the system by fabricating evidence, then it is my duty to hold them accountable." Brooks' hands clenched into fists at his sides. He opened his mouth, perhaps to speak, but the words died on his tongue. The judge motioned for him to sit. "We will review the evidence submitted. The court will take a short recess before continuing." As the judge's gavel struck, signaling the pause, Marissa leaned back in her chair. Her heart still raced, but there was a spark inside her, a fierce, burning determination. She had walked into this courtroom, knowing the risk. She knew how dangerous it could be to stand against a police officer in her city. But she also knew that sometimes justice demanded that someone take a stand, no matter how impossible it seemed. She glanced at the file in front of her, the weight of the truth pressing into her hands like a promise. Every falsified report, every story twisted by someone in power, had led to this moment. And now, the entire system could either crush her or be reminded that no one, not even an officer in uniform, was above the law. The tension didn't leave the room during the recess. People whispered as they left the courtroom, casting sideways glances at her. Some nodded subtly in respect, others with suspicion. Marissa knew she was walking a tightrope. One misstep, one wrong word, and this could turn against her. As she stood near the back, a young clerk approached, looking nervous. "Ms. Taylor, a man asked to speak with you. He said it's urgent and confidential." Marissa frowned. "Who is he?" The clerk hesitated. He didn't give a name. Just said it's about Officer Brooks. Her pulse quickened. Something about the clerk's demeanor made her uneasy. She followed him into a quiet hallway outside the courtroom. The hallway was empty, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly, casting long shadows across the tile floor. At the far end, a man in a plain suit waited, his posture rigid. He stepped forward, voice low and measured. "Ms. Taylor, I am Agent Carter. I work directly with the State Oversight Committee. You've triggered something bigger than you realize. Officer Brooks, he has been under investigation for years. But no one ever had enough proof. Until today." Marissa's stomach twisted. "Are you saying this isn't just about him lying in court?" Carter's gaze was sharp. "It's never just about one lie. He's been covering tracks, falsifying reports, intimidating witnesses. He thrives on fear and invisibility. But today, you expose him in front of everyone. You might have just made him your enemy permanently." Marissa's mind raced. Fear gripped her for a moment, but then determination surged. She squared her shoulders. "Then it's good we're on the same side, because I don't back down from the truth." Carter nodded slowly. "Good, because you're about to learn just how far someone like him will go to protect himself." Marissa felt the weight of the moment. The stakes had just escalated beyond the courtroom, beyond a single officer's lie. And deep down, she knew one thing. The battle was only beginning. As she returned to the courtroom, the echoes of her footsteps felt ominous, like a drumbeat announcing the storm that was about to break. She glanced at Brooks, who sat rigidly in his seat, jaw clenched. He hadn't noticed her yet, but she could see the tension in his hands, in the way he shifted in his chair. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, just loud enough for her to hear, "Justice doesn't wait for anyone, not even you." And in that split second, she realized this was no longer just a courtroom battle. This was a fight for the truth, for accountability, and for every person who had been silenced by fear and corruption. The gavel struck again, signaling the continuation of the hearing. The room fell silent. All eyes were on her. Marissa straightened, opened her file, and smiled faintly. But somewhere in the shadows, Brooks clenched his fists and whispered under his breath, "She has no idea what's coming for her." And at that exact moment, a small envelope slid under Marissa's chair. She picked it up, curious and cautious. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with one word written in bold red letters: "Watch your back." Her heart skipped a beat. The courtroom seemed to grow darker in that instant. She knew, without a doubt, that this fight would demand everything she had, and it had already begun. Shadows of corruption. Marissa Taylor folded the small crimson-stamped envelope in her hand, the word, "Watch your back," burning into her thoughts. The courtroom noise faded into a distant hum as she felt an icy grip of realization settle over her. Officer Brooks wasn't just arrogant. He was dangerous. And this wasn't going to be a simple legal battle. She returned to her seat, the file of her evidence resting heavily in front of her. Her mind raced through every encounter, every report she had filed over the past 2 years. Brooks had retaliated before, but always indirectly, hidden behind bureaucracy, muted whispers, and fabricated complaints against whistleblowers. She had survived until now. But something about this moment, about the envelope, made her realize that he knew exactly who she was. Across the courtroom, Brooks kept his eyes forward, pretending not to notice the ripple of tension sweeping through the spectators. He had learned long ago how to conceal fear, but Marissa could sense it. A predator always leaves traces. She'd trained herself to read those traces like a map, and tonight, they pointed straight at him. The judge's gavel brought her attention back to the present. "We will now review the submitted evidence. Ms. Taylor, you may proceed." Marissa stood, her voice steady, though her heart pounded against her ribcage. Your Honor, this documentation proves that on the date in question, I was conducting official state inspections. Each entry is time-stamped and cross-referenced with official government logs. I can provide the servers for independent verification. The judge examined the files carefully. Officer Brooks, do you have any response to this evidence? Brooks swallowed hard, his knuckles white on the edge of the witness stand. Your Honor, I may have misremembered the exact day, but may have. Marissa's voice cut through the courtroom like steel. Officer Brooks, you just testified under oath that I committed a crime on March 14th. That statement was false, and it constitutes perjury. A ripple of shock ran through the room. The prosecutor's face went pale. Witnesses in the gallery leaned forward, whispers bouncing off the walls like electricity. Brooks' mouth opened, then closed. The words he had meticulously prepared had evaporated. Marissa's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in a fierce determination. This isn't just about me. It's about the countless people who trust our law enforcement system to act with integrity. If a single officer can fabricate evidence with impunity, then the system fails everyone. The judge leaned back, his expression unreadable. We will review the government logs and cross-verify them with independent sources. For now, court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. As the gavel struck, Marissa felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned sharply. Agent Carter's face appeared, calm but tense. Marissa, he said quietly, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. You just lit a fuse. Brooks isn't going to back down quietly. You need to be ready. I've been ready, she replied, gripping the edge of the table. I've dealt with corrupt officials before. But this feels different. He knows who I am, what I do, and he's not just going to let it slide. Carter nodded grimly. Exactly. He's cornered, and corner predators are dangerous. I can't accompany you inside the court proceedings, but outside, we can make sure you have protection. You need to be careful with everything. Your phone, your email, even who you speak to. Marissa exhaled slowly, the weight of reality pressing on her shoulders. I've never backed down from injustice, and I'm not starting now. That night, she returned to her small apartment, the city's lights flickering like distant stars through the tall windows. She placed the envelope on her desk, the red letters still stark in her mind. Her apartment had always been a sanctuary, a place where she could process her thoughts in peace. But now it felt exposed, like someone was watching, waiting for a misstep. She poured herself a cup of tea, trying to calm her nerves. Her mind kept replaying Brooks' testimony. Each were a dagger of potential danger. She thought of the people she had tried to protect over the years, the cases she had taken on quietly, and the injustice she had seen fester. And she realized she couldn't let fear stop her. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hesitation flickered through her, but she answered. Marissa Taylor? A disguised voice asked. Yes, she replied, keeping her tone firm. Listen carefully. You don't know me, but I've been watching Brooks for years. You've just put yourself directly in the path of a man who doesn't care who he hurts to protect himself. He will escalate, and he will lie, always lie, but there are ways to fight back. Meet me at the old warehouse by the docks, midnight, alone. The line went dead. Marissa stared at the phone, her heart racing. She had 3 choices: ignore it, report it, or follow it. Every instinct screamed caution. Every fiber of her being whispered that danger lurked ahead. But she also knew that inaction wasn't an option. The fight for justice had already started, and she couldn't let Brooks, or anyone like him, win. Midnight found her at the edge of the city's harbor, shadows stretching like claws across the cracked concrete. The air was thick with fog and the smell of salt water. Every step she took echoed in the empty space, each sound amplified in the silence. She had trained herself to stay alert, to trust her instincts. But even then, the world felt like it could collapse around her at any moment. A figure emerged from the mist, tall, cloaked in dark clothing. You're brave, the voice said, or reckless. Maybe both. Marissa squared her shoulders. I'm here because I have to be. You have information about Brooks. The figure nodded, stepping closer. Yes, but it's worse than you think. He's been manipulating cases for years, covering tracks, intimidating witnesses. And he's only getting bolder. That warning you received? It wasn't a bluff. He's testing boundaries, finding weaknesses. You have to know he's dangerous, and he will escalate. Marissa's pulse quickened. Then tell me what I need to know. I won't back down. The figure handed her a small USB drive. Everything you need is here. Evidence of his corruption, his falsified reports, his threats. But you need to be smart. He's already watching you. And tonight, he may already be closer than you realize. Marissa took the USB, fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Thank you. Who are you? The figure disappeared into the fog before she could answer. Marissa stared at the empty harbor, the sense of isolation crushing her. One thing was clear. She had just been handed the keys to a much larger battle than she had anticipated, and the clock was ticking. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. You shouldn't have gone out tonight. A familiar, cold voice said. Brooks. Marissa swallowed, her blood running cold. You'll regret underestimating me, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. A low, sinister laugh echoed from the line. Oh, I think I already have the upper hand. But don't worry, we'll see how brave you really are. The line went dead, leaving her alone in the fog, the waves crashing against the pier like a warning. Marissa gripped the USB drive tightly. She knew one thing with absolute certainty. The fight had just begun, and she would have to face Brooks' darkness head-on. But she also knew she couldn't fight blindly. She needed allies. She needed strategy. And above all, she needed courage, because what lay ahead would test every ounce of strength she had. And somewhere in the shadows, Brooks watched. The hunt begins. The city at night felt colder than usual, as if the fog carried whispers of danger through every alleyway. Marissa Taylor returned to her apartment, USB drive clutched tightly in her hand. The envelope on her desk still bore its warning. Watch your back. But tonight, the stakes had escalated far beyond a simple threat. She had seen firsthand that Brooks was not just a corrupt officer. He was a predator, one who thrived on fear and manipulation. And now, with the evidence in her possession, the predator knew he had a target. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, exhaling shakily. The room was quiet, but every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, sounded amplified. She set the USB drive on her desk and opened her laptop, the glow illuminating her determined eyes. Marissa had one goal, to expose Brooks before he could silence her. Agent Carter had briefed her on safety protocols earlier, but her instincts screamed that tonight was the night danger could strike. She opened the drive carefully, scanning through the files. There were spreadsheets detailing falsified reports, emails threatening witnesses, and internal memos revealing years of systematic abuse. Her stomach churned as she realized the depth of Brooks' deception. He wasn't just dangerous because of one lie. He had been building a fortress of manipulation for years. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. Marissa's pulse spiked. She pressed the answer button with a trembling finger. Did you get it? The disguised voice asked. I did, Marissa replied. This is bigger than I thought. How do I even start to use this without tipping him off? Carefully, the voice said. There's a pattern to his arrogance. He thinks he's untouchable, but arrogance is a weakness. You need to leak this information strategically, test the waters, and make sure the public sees it in a way he cannot control. And above all, Marissa, watch your surroundings. He knows you now. He's already planning his next move. Marissa nodded, though the figure couldn't see her. I understand. But why help me? How do I know I can trust you? There was a pause. You don't, the voice admitted. But right now our goals align. That's enough. I'll guide you, and you decide how far you want to go. Remember, he's cunning, ruthless, and dangerous. One wrong step, and you're vulnerable. The line went dead, leaving Marissa with a mix of adrenaline and unease. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, yet she had to move forward. She spent the next few hours meticulously analyzing the files, creating a strategy to expose Brooks while staying one step ahead. Her mind raced with possibilities, contingencies, and the terrifying reality that Brooks would anticipate every move. By morning, she had a plan. She would leak selected evidence to trusted journalists, revealing enough to prompt an internal investigation without exposing herself prematurely. The thought was terrifying, yet empowering. For the first time, Marissa felt the surge of control that comes from turning fear into action. But just as she began preparing her messages, there was a sudden knock at her door. Her stomach lurched. She froze. The knock repeated, louder, insistent. "Marissa, open up." "It's me," a voice called out. She scanned her mind for possibilities. Carter hadn't warned her about a personal visit, and the disguised informant wouldn't risk revealing themselves in person. She edged toward the door cautiously. "Who is it?" she demanded. "Officer Brooks." The voice sneered, and then the weight of reality hit her like a sledgehammer. He knew her apartment. He was closer than she thought. Marissa's hand shook as she reached for the deadbolt. Her mind raced. Could she outmaneuver him in this confined space? Could she survive long enough to turn the tables? Her eyes flicked to the desk, the USB drive sitting innocently, holding the proof of his crimes. If Brooks got his hands on it, everything would be lost. She needed a plan, fast. The knocking stopped. Silence. A pause that stretched unbearably. Then a whisper, "Marissa, you really thought you could hide?" Adrenaline surged through her veins. She bolted to the kitchen, grabbing a heavy cast-iron skillet. Her hand was steady despite the pounding of her heart. She positioned herself near the corner. Every sense sharpened to a razor's edge. The doorknob rattled. Brooks' voice taunted from the other side, cold and measured. "You're smart, I'll give you that. But smart doesn't mean untouchable. Let me in, and maybe I'll go easy on you." Marissa's mind raced. She couldn't let him in. Not now. Not ever. She needed leverage. Her eyes flicked to the window overlooking the fire escape. She could make a run for it, but she needed to buy time. "Your threats don't scare me," she called out, her voice calm despite the fear twisting in her stomach. "You've lied under oath, manipulated evidence, and intimidated countless people. If you step inside, every move you make can be traced. I have proof that would destroy you." There was a pause on the other side, a subtle shift. She could almost hear him weighing the risk. "Bold," Brooks muttered. "You think a little evidence can protect you? You'll regret this." Marissa's heart raced as she realized this encounter was only the beginning. She had faced corruption before, but this was personal, and she knew, deep in her bones, that Brooks would escalate. He had nothing left to lose. Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass echoed from the other side of the building. Her head snapped toward the window. Shadows moved. Someone or something was outside, circling. She didn't have time to process, only to act. Grabbing the USB drive, she bolted to the fire escape. Her feet barely made a sound on the metal steps as she descended into the alley below. Fog wrapped around her like a cloak, muffling the city's hum and amplifying every heartbeat. Her mind spun with possibilities, but one thing was certain. She had just survived her first direct confrontation, and she was more determined than ever. Marissa ducked behind a dumpster, catching her breath. The streets were empty, but she could feel the presence of danger lingering, like a predator just out of sight. She glanced at the USB drive, the key to exposing Brooks' corruption. If she could get this into the right hands, she could ignite a chain reaction, one that might finally bring him down. Her phone buzzed again, and she recognized the disguised voice immediately. "Did it work?" the voice asked urgently. "I made it out," she whispered, voice tight. "But he's not just corrupt, he's dangerous. And now he knows I'm not afraid of him." "Good," the voice said, "because now it's time to turn the tables. But, Marissa, you're going to need every ounce of courage and cunning you have. He's more prepared than you think. And this is only the beginning." Marissa's hand clenched around a USB drive. She felt the weight of the evidence, the danger, and the responsibility pressing down on her. She had survived tonight, but she knew in her heart that Brooks would escalate. He would use every resource, every connection, every ounce of power to try to destroy her. and she would have to fight back with everything she had. Fire in the shadows. Marissa Taylor crouched in the dim alleyway, the fog curling around her like smoke from an unseen fire. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The USB drive in her pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds, carried with the power to dismantle a career, an empire, a man who had thought himself untouchable. Brooks was dangerous. That much was clear. But he had underestimated her. He had underestimated her courage, her resilience, and her ability to fight not just with evidence, but with intellect and sheer will. Her phone buzzed. She fished it out, fingers trembling as she saw the number. The disguised informant. "Are you ready?" the voice asked, calm, controlled. "I'm ready," Marissa said, her voice firm. "But I need to know I'm not walking blind. He's dangerous, and I can't do this alone." "You won't be alone," the voice replied. "I have contacts who can get your message out safely. You have to choose your first move carefully. The evidence is explosive, but if Brooks catches wind too early, he will come after you hard. Are you prepared to risk everything?" Marissa exhaled. "I've already risked everything. There's no turning back now." The informant gave her detailed instructions. Upload the evidence to a secure server, create multiple backups in different locations, and prepare a selective leak to journalists who had a history of exposing corruption in law enforcement. Every step was calculated to prevent Brooks from tracing the source back to her while ensuring maximum impact. Hours later, she sat in a rented office space, the glow of computer screens casting shadows across her face. She uploaded the files, her fingers trembling but steady. The first batch of evidence went out. Time-stamped logs, falsified reports, threatening emails. Each piece was a dagger aimed directly at Brooks' carefully constructed facade. Then her phone rang again. It was Brooks. She didn't flinch. "Playing games, Marissa?" His voice hissed, low and venomous. "I know you've got something. I can feel it. You're clever. I'll give you that, but clever won't save you. You can't hide from me." Marissa's lips curved into a faint, cold smile. "You lied under oath, Daniel. You intimidated witnesses. You thought no one would notice. Now the truth is coming out, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." There was a pause, a dangerous quiet. Then Brooks laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." She hung up, heart pounding. Every nerve screamed that he would strike soon. But instead of fear, Marissa felt a surge of determination. Brooks thrived on intimidation, on fear, but she refused to be his victim. She would not run. She would not cower. She would fight, and she would expose him for the fraud and danger he truly was. By morning, the first articles began to appear online. Headlines screamed about alleged corruption in the police department, falsified reports, and intimidation of witnesses. Anonymous sources, verified logs, and damning evidence painted a picture that the public could no longer ignore. Marissa sat in her apartment, watching the reactions pour in, viral posts, news coverage, social media uproar. Citizens were outraged, demanding accountability. But somewhere in the shadows, Brooks was watching, calculating, planning. He wasn't defeated yet. Far from it. The next day, Marissa received a package at her door. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo, her walking into the office building, from an angle she didn't recognize. Written on the back in red ink, "I see you." Her stomach churned. Brooks wasn't just angry, he was hunting, and he had resources. He knew how to strike, how to manipulate fear, and he had already begun. She called Agent Carter. "He knows," she said. "He knows I've exposed him, and he's escalating. What do we do?" Carter's voice was steady, but there was an edge of concern. "We escalate, too. You've got public attention now. He's losing control. Use that. We'll arrange protective measures. But you need to stay ahead. Don't let him predict your moves. Right now, the battlefield is your choice, and you have the advantage if you act smart." Marissa nodded, determination hardening her features. "I've waited too long to act. I won't stop now." That evening, she followed a lead the informant had provided, a covert meeting with investigative journalists. The location was discreet, a quiet warehouse converted into a temporary newsroom. The journalists were professional, sharp, and ready. They had questions, yes, but the evidence was so thorough, so irrefutable, that the tension quickly turned into a collaborative firestorm of strategy. "We can make sure this hits the public in a way that can't be ignored," one journalist said, scrolling to the files on a laptop. "This isn't just a story. It's a movement waiting to happen." Marissa felt a surge of hope. For the first time, she realized she wasn't alone. She had allies, people willing to fight for truth and justice. But even as the optimism filled her chest, the awareness of danger remained. Brooks was still out there, still watching. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A subtle sound, metal scraping against concrete, echoed through the warehouse. Marissa's pulse spiked. She grabbed the nearest object, prepared to defend herself. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Brooks. He was calm, almost casual, but his eyes burned with fury. "Did you really think you could play me and walk away?" he asked, voice low, controlled. "You've made enemies today, Marissa. People who will protect you? That's temporary. I'm permanent." Marissa stood tall, heart hammering. "Permanent? You're already exposed, Daniel. The truth doesn't disappear because you want it to. You lied. You manipulated, and now the world knows. You're done." Brooks smiled, cold, terrifying. "We'll see about that." Before she could react, he lunged toward the control panel, trying to destroy the evidence. But Marissa was faster. She pushed a heavy chair into his path, blocking him for just enough time. Chaos erupted. The journalists scrambled, alarms blared, and in the confusion, Marissa grabbed a USB drive. She ran, weaving through shadows, heart pounding, every instinct screaming survival. Outside, the night air was sharp, slicing through the tension. She ran without looking back, knowing Brooks was still following, relentless. She ducked into an alley, her mind racing for a safe exit, for a plan, for anything that could keep her alive long enough to finish what she started. Somewhere behind her, Brooks' footsteps echoed, persistent, unyielding. She wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. She was fighting for her life. Triumph of truth. The city streets were quiet, almost unnervingly so. The fog hung heavy, masking the edges of alleyways and hiding shadows that seemed to move with intent. Marissa Taylor moved swiftly, the USB drive clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Brooks had escalated further than she had anticipated. Every step she took was a calculation, every breath measured. She could feel him watching, a predator honing in on his prey. But Marissa had something Brooks would never understand. Courage tempered by preparation and a relentless commitment to truth. Agent Carter had coordinated a safe house for her, a place with surveillance, secure exits, and trusted allies ready to act at a moment's notice. Marissa reached the building, the adrenaline in her veins burning with determination. This was it, the final phase of her plan, the moment where fear became action, where truth would strike down the lie. Inside, she set up her laptop and connected the USB drive to the secure network Carter had provided. The journalists, working remotely under encrypted channels, were ready. Her hands hovered over the keyboard as she uploaded the evidence, double-checking every timestamp, every email, every report. Each piece of evidence told the same story: lies, corruption, intimidation, and abuse of power by Officer Daniel Brooks. Marissa's heart pounded, not with fear, but with righteous purpose. "This ends tonight," she whispered to herself, her voice steady and resolute. No more lies, no more fear. Suddenly, the building security alarm blared. A shadow passed a window, a figure moving with intent. Brooks. He stormed into the safe house, eyes wild with fury, his presence radiating danger. "Did you really think you could destroy me from a hiding place?" he snarled, slamming the door behind him. "Do you know what happened to people like you?" Marissa didn't flinch. She had anticipated this confrontation. "Yes, I know exactly what happened," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "They lie, they cheat, they try to intimidate. But I also know what happens when the truth is unstoppable. And the truth, Daniel, will always win." Brooks lunged toward her, but Marissa sidestepped and grabbed a nearby chair, positioning it between them. Every movement was calculated, every second critical. She had trained for moments like this, not for physical combat, but for mental endurance, for staying alive until justice could reach the world. "You're finished," she said, her eyes blazing. "The world knows what you've done. You can't intimidate everyone anymore. I have the proof. The public, the media, even the internal investigation. Everyone is watching now. This is your reckoning." Brooks' face twisted in rage. "You're lying. This evidence is fabricated." Marissa laughed softly, the sound filled with defiance. "I wish it were fabricated, but it's all real. Every email, every falsified report, every witness you tried to silence. It's all here. And tonight, the world will see it." Brooks hesitated for a fraction of a second. Enough time for Marissa to activate the secure upload. The files were sent to multiple media outlets simultaneously, all encrypted and verifiable. Within moments, the first headlines began to appear online, the city waking to the story of corruption that had lurked in its shadows for years. People flooded the social media channels, demanding accountability. News stations picked up the story. Internal affairs units were mobilizing. Brooks' carefully constructed empire of fear was crumbling brick by brick. He lunged again, desperate, reckless. But this time, Marissa had anticipated it. Using her training and presence of mind, she forced him toward the nearest exit, triggering a silent alarm that summoned backup. Sirens wailed in the distance, closing in. Brooks realized he had lost control, and for the first time, fear replaces arrogance. Agent Carter and law enforcement officers arrived swiftly, restraining Brooks. His eyes met Marissa's, a mixture of disbelief and fury. "This isn't over," he spat. Marissa held her ground. "It is over, Daniel. You lied. You intimidated. You thought you were untouchable. But the truth is unstoppable. You're not above the law, and justice will always find you." Brooks was escorted away, the echoes of his threats fading into the night. Marissa exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. But it was more than relief. It was triumph. She had faced fear, danger, and injustice head-on. She had stood alone against a system designed to protect the corrupt, and she had prevailed. News reports flooded in the next day. The city learned of Brooks' corruption, the systemic failures he had exploited, and the courage of the woman who had dared to expose him. Public reaction was overwhelming. Citizens demanded reform, officers were called to testify, and policies began to change. Marissa's courage had sparked a movement. She sat in her apartment, finally allowing herself a moment to breathe. The USB drive lay on her desk, now a symbol of truth and resilience. She thought about the fears she had felt, the threats, the adrenaline-fueled nights of evasion, and realized that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in spite of it. Agent Carter's voice came through her phone, warm but tinged with admiration. "You did it, Marissa. You stood up to a monster and won. The city owes you more than it can ever repay." Marissa smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Someone had to stand up. Someone had to tell the truth." Carter's tone softened. "And that someone was you. You inspired more than you know. People will remember this, Marissa, not just for exposing Brooks, but for showing what courage really looks like." Marissa looked out her window at the city below. The fog was lifting, revealing streets and buildings bathed in the early morning light. The city felt alive again, as if a breath of honesty had replaced the stench of corruption. She whispered to herself, almost reverently, "Truth wins. Courage wins. Justice can be unstoppable." For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax. The fight wasn't over entirely. Systemic reform would take time, but the immediate victory was undeniable. She had faced danger, deceit, and corruption head-on and emerged victorious. And somewhere deep down, she knew that her courage would inspire others to act, to speak, to stand up against injustice. The ripple of one person's bravery could change everything. Marissa Taylor had lit that spark. The city would never be the same again, and neither would she.